Now, we have to also remember this is also the same organization that he applied for that asked him these questions that painted foxes with with irradium and tried to make Hitler a woman. So let's not forget about like the OSS and their shenanigans. Like Moe Berg is cool and everything, but like I feel like, especially after doing the research, like he might have been the actual like first like real thing that I could take seriously that the OSS has actually done.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Chaotic Underground. I'm your host for the evening. It's Ryan Damask. I'm here with my good friends, Stephen Bonsai Bandit, Zach Z Diggity.
Cheers.
Today, we're going to enter into part 2 of our little trilogy of crazy World War II stories. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we told you about the OSS and Wild Bill Donovan and some of the crazy antics they got up to. This week, we're going to dive into a particular agent of the OSS who you would never think would be a spy.
Yes.
So we're talking about Moe Berg, who you may or may not have ever heard of. He was a professional baseball player. He was an academic masterpiece. I mean, this guy went to Princeton. He went to multiple different colleges, had all kinds of degrees, and ended up working for the OSS and taking down Hitler's atomic project.
Real Renaissance man, that Moe Berg. Baseball, academics, assassination.
I mean, I gotta ask. Do any of you feel like failures compared to our contemporays in history?
Yes,
because
absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, apparently war is what it takes because, you know, you talk about Wild Bill Donovan and like he was a warrior. He was an attorney general. He founded the OSS and built this up. And now you have Moe Berg, who's like, I'm a professional sports player, but I also have countless educational accolades. You know what it is? They didn't have anything else to do besides get educated and fight wars. Like, they didn't have anything else to do. They had hoops and sticks, and they were like, that's bullshit. I'm going to go fight a war and go to school.
Steven, you bring up a good point, like, because like I feel like I'm special because I ride my bike for especially long amounts of times, but meanwhile, these guys are academics, can speak 8 different languages, and I don't know, are basically every single person's the Jesus Christ of their generation. So
it does feel like that, doesn't it?
But remember, they don't like write books and make movies about the people who aren't learning 8 languages and playing baseball and being war heroes.
Like, but they didn't write movies or books about okay, maybe there's books, but they didn't write movies about Moe Berg, the baseball player from Princeton with 3 degrees who assassinated somebody.
We just watched it.
We literally just watched it.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah.
How do I not know about this? How does not everybody know about this shit?
It came out in 2018 too, starring the enigmatic Paul Rudd.
It took that many years to make a movie about Moe Berg.
So actually there was a movie before that was, I mean, it wasn't anything special. It was kind of like a biopic type deal, but this one was like a full-fledged drama. It was at Sundance. It was called The Catcher Was a Spy.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good. I liked it a lot.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Moe Berg for a second. We'll talk a little bit about his early life and what led him to be our matter of discussion tonight. So Moe Berg, he was born in Harlem. He had a Ukrainian immigrant father, and his mother and his father were both Jewish, which key detail for as we move forward. He was a bright boy from like an early age. At age 3, he was already begging his mother to let him attend school. So they ended up moving to the Roseville neighborhood of Newark, and
New Jersey.
Yeah. And this was a very nice area. I mean, it was all middle class. It was a great school district. And what his father wanted was there were very few Jews. He wanted to kind of insulate himself from that culture. The family, while they were Jewish, they didn't practice, and so Moe Berg kind of continued his life that way.
Just kind of like just keeping his I guess linear roots like under wraps in a way. Like, was there an intention to that they wanted to separate from the culture, or
it was just like, yeah, even though people weren't as like as far out as like the Nazis with disliking Jewish people, it was still kind of like a like prejudice, in especially in some of these like nice middle class neighborhoods where they're predominantly Christian. In fact, Moe Berg, by the way, his name's Morris Berg, Mo for short. He started playing baseball actually with a local Christian community center at the age of 7, but he went by a nickname, not only with the baseball group but also at school, to try to like stay away from any connotations to like his Jewish heritage. And he went by the name Runt Wolf, which immediately I was like, that sounds like an NPC that like my DM would come up with off the top of their head if I got asked. I think
I saw that actor on the Pornhub account, on a Pornhub video one time too.
I think that's the other wolf inside of him, and the other one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
at the same time, I do have a question about him, and it seems stupid, but is Berg short for something, or is that actually his last name?
I had the exact same question, and then I looked around a little bit, and everything I could tell that was his actual last name. Now it could have been shortened like earlier in his lineage, but it wasn't like he didn't shorten it.
Okay, like because that's the thing is like sometimes in prejudice situations they try to kind of like hide some of that stuff by changing their name up a bit or whatever the case is. And I was just kind of curious, so that answers my question. Thank you kindly, sir. Was he a natural in baseball from the get-go, or is that just a hobby that he picked up on his way to multiple degrees or whatever?
Yeah, he was actually a natural in a lot of things. He did do very well in baseball all through his school years. In fact, by the time he was graduating from high school, the local newspaper drafted up this like 9-man dream team from like all the local private schools and public schools and baseball clubs, and he was chosen as like second baseman from all these schools. And not only that, but his academics were like amazing. They think he had a photographic memory even from like a really young age, and so he
I mean, he was a better academic than he was a baseball player, though. I think
yes, but I mean, whenever he got into professional league later on, like he clearly, there was a big difference between him and like Babe Ruth and stuff. But in like high school, I mean, he was up there, right? Because just against normal kids.
Yeah, the average baseball player is still better than the average non-baseball player, I guess. I don't know. Sports, I know sports.
Sure you do.
Yeah. Do the thing, win the points. Yeah. Football.
I know enough because I like baseball itself, but football, I just absorbed thanks to being a Texas boy. You don't get a choice in that matter, but baseball's a very intense program, even back in the old days. So I'm a little shocked by this. Is that how he got into college?
Yeah. So he left out of high school and originally went for 2 semesters to New York University, but quickly dropped out of there and went on to Princeton. And they say that that's like the last time he ever spoke about his year at New York University. From then on, he was a purely Princeton man.
He was very like, and we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but like he was very like secretive about a lot of things in his life, like almost everything, to the point like from what I've researched, to the point where I feel like he was doing it kind of on purpose to kind of like give him this air of mystery in a way. Like, I don't know. That's kind of what I was reading from it. And then especially like the way that Paul Rudd portrayed him in the movie, that whole interaction they did where he asked the Japanese gentleman to just laugh at him and give him a pat on the back and everything in front of his friends, you know, to impress them, you know, stuff like that. I feel like that he's just...
I mean, I feel like most, a lot of successful secret agents kind of have this mysterious persona about them, and maybe, you know, a little bit of insecurity to boot.
Like, maybe he's just got middle school syndrome, and he was a Princeton guy who was good at baseball, and he's like, I'm going to pretend like I'm mysterious. I'm mysterious. You don't know what I'm going to do. I might be working for the government.
That's what just all dudes do these days.
I mean, actually, at Princeton, because of his Jewish heritage, which was far different from the majority of the students and faculty at Princeton, as well as like his, you know, he didn't have as much means as most of the students there. You know, he came from a lower middle class family, right? He was kind of not ostracized, but he was definitely on his own a lot. I mean, he didn't fit in with the average cliques of Princeton. So he spent most of his time in his studies. He graduated magna cum laude with a major in modern languages. He mastered Latin, Greek, French, Spanish, Italian, German, and Sanskrit to boot. His main professor and kind of like the head of the languages department was Harold H. Bender, who is the chief etymologist for Webster's International Dictionary.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, when you're ostracized from like the Ascot Club, it makes sense that you would focus on language and trying to expand your knowledge and be better than everybody else.
So not only was he majoring in all these different languages and just excelling in his academics, he was also playing baseball for Princeton. And he was doing great. His whole first season, he played first baseman, and the team went undefeated. As a sophomore, he was a starting shortstop, and they also played a really good season that season. He kind of started to show himself. He wasn't a great hitter, and he was a slow base runner, but he had a very accurate arm, and he had great baseball instincts. He knew how to read players. He knew how to read the field. He was showing himself still as a really strong baseball player, just not so much on the offense.
So what you're telling me is that Moe Berg was both a jock and a nerd at the same time?
We call those student athletes.
Athletes.
Yeah, but he was a student athlete that actually excelled to like the nine. You
haven't seen student athletes in Texas, Jesus.
Gosh, you haven't seen student athletes in Utah. Jeez.
The professors haven't seen the student athletes in Texas.
It's so fucking true.
So in his final year at Princeton in 1923. There was a championship game against Yale. Yale did end up beating them, but Moe had probably one of the best games of his college career. And not only were the New York Giants there, but the Robins, who are now the Dodgers, were there as well. And basically both had a really strong interest in him. He ended up going with the Robins. And signed a contract for about $5,000, somewhere around $86,000 today, to join on the Robins, and that would lead him down a 15-year career in the MLB or in major and minor league baseball.
So he played baseball for that long, for 15
Mhm.
years.
Well, play's a strong word.
Well, I mean, like he was a catcher though, right? So like
he was a catcher, but dude, this guy after his first season with the Robins, he like dipped and went to France, I guess, with his contract money, and attended like the University of Paris, and like got all kinds of. He took like 30 something classes while he was there,
Jesus
and
Christ.
he was still dedicated to like the intellectual side
Like,
of himself.
it
was almost like his baseball career was like his hobby.
I get like fucking like anxiety from watching a YouTube tutorial video. 30 fucking classes. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I was editing the Dutchman episode the other yesterday, and I had to edit, like, I had to look up how to do something on Premiere, and it was like the most exhausting thing for me. Like 30 classes while learning 8 languages, and like honestly, we were watching that movie, and like Steven said, yeah, it made me feel like a real big piece of shit.
Made you feel? I know you are a big piece of shit. I'm fucking with you, bro. Good friends.
So Mo had like a insatiable hunger for knowledge, and not only in like a classroom setting, but while he was in Paris, he developed this habit that would go on with him for the rest of his breathing life, which was he like read dozens of newspapers a day, and he would like mark parts of them like whenever he was stopping or whenever he wanted to like remember something, and he would have them laid all over his apartment or his house or whatever in very strategic positions, and he would just yell or attack anyone who touched his newspapers that might put him in a different position.
Okay, so he's literally exhibiting early analyst behavior. Like in terms of intelligence analysts, this is the type of thing they do. They literally have to keep track of information, and they absorb it in different times and different ways, and they have to keep notes and keep track of that. So this is basically like the onset of an analyst behavior. Like, I'm genuinely curious about this because I don't know anything about Moe Berg past what you've told me in the last 20 minutes. So
I mean, he very well may have been the first
like intelligence analyst.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, Ryan, you're the one who did the heavy research. So
no, OSS was moving pretty strong along without Moe Berg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was just a cog in the machine.
Gotcha.
I think he fit into it well.
Cog.
Yeah, he was a very shiny cog that they were all very proud of for the most part, right?
I'm proud of a lot of things that nobody else is proud of. I'm just saying.
So he continued to play ball for a few different teams over the next few years, and then ended up on the Yankees. But during that time, every chance he got, he was out traveling, to Italy and France and Switzerland and wherever, and just attending classes, reading tons of newspapers, reading tons of books. He spent a lot of time in libraries. And then eventually, while he was with the White Sox, he basically told him he was just going to completely skip spring training because he was trying to finish his first year at Columbia Law School and get his law degree.
Really?
And he ended up like starting the season late to finish his degree. He did that again the next year, and basically around this time is whenever he gets traded around some more, but he continues to play. He starts playing less and less because he's interested in so many other things, and basically he's just getting paid like a fat contract salary to like sit on the bench and then come play like occasionally.
So
like
his baseball job fueled his academics, essentially.
Right.
That's it. Yeah, like that was the main focus of it.
I mean, that's the dream, baseball, right? Yeah.
But it wasn't like number one to him by any means.
Yeah. No, I think that's ultimately like, especially for a guy like Moe Berg, I think that's a perfect scenario for him because he's such an everything man that he's making money. He's making this fat like paycheck from baseball, but they're just totally chill with him just being benched and only playing every once in a while. And and that just gives him time to focus on, shit that he wants to do. Like I yearn for a job like that.
So this goes on for a few years, and finally, we get to this like sweet spot, like the 30s between World War One and World War Two, where everything's kind of tense, but everything is kind of peaceful, right? Japan, we're trying to improve our relations with Japan, even though they look like they're about to come to like an inevitable clashing point. But Japan's trying to get into baseball and stuff. They're and what's his name? Herb Hunter, a retired ball player. He set up this thing for a few baseball players, Moe Berg, Lefty O'Doul, and Ted Lyons, to go to Japan and just teach a bunch of baseball seminars all around Japan.
On the baseline, we got old Curly. Lefty Mahoney here. Yeah.
You are correct. Professional baseball in Japan really mainly took off in the 1920s and moved from there. It's huge over there. It's absolutely bonkers huge over there.
Japanese love baseball. Like, I don't know anything about sports, but like I know enough about Japan, and like baseball's a huge deal over there.
It's
I don't know baseball, but I know Japan.
Yeah. Well, I know baseball as well, but we won't go that far into it. But it's fascinating. Did Moe Berg have any influence over Japanese baseball at all?
So what was really cool about Moe Berg, and he made a couple trips. So this was the first trip, and him and the other ball players, they went around to some of like the big prefects to where the big baseball teams were, did these seminars, and then the other baseball players flew home. He decided to stay, and he went on a further tour of Japan. And he was just he was in love with it.
He was an ever bachelor, so. And traditionally in the 1940s, like at that time, I assume, like if you're not married by the time you're like in your 30s or anything like that, you're basically like a menace to society in a way. Like,
you're
I don't know,
a pariah to a degree. Yeah,
you're a pariah to a degree. Like and so like it kind of makes sense that everybody else would, because they got to go home to their families and their wives and everything like that. Moe Berg's just like, I'm an ever bachelor. I'm gonna just hang out in Japan. Fucking life goals. This guy's my hero.
And not only and so. Not only was he just a really cool guy to be around, but, these other baseball players come and they're friendly and they're great ball players and they can teach and coach very well. But Moe Berg can actually speak to them in their language, communicate with them. So you have these other ball players that come over and are showing them some great stuff that are way better ball players than Moe Berg, but Moe Berg can communicate what they're saying. And so he actually ends up being a huge influence over there. I mean, you can see clippings from newspapers in Japan at the time and Moe Berg's like the first face. And in fact, the second time he went with like a bunch of the players from like Murderers Row. He went with like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, Lefty Gomez, like tons of big ball players. And you'll look at these newspapers and you'll see like Moe Berg and then Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
I actually know Moe Berg from baseball. Like I hadn't really mentioned it yet, but
get the hell out. You actually knew
I knew the name from baseball. Like between just my fascination with baseball and everything, like along with Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig.
I didn't take you for a baseball guy, Steven.
I know it's a very quiet thing. Like I mainly try to tell people I hate sports. I absolutely despise anything that it doesn't have big eyes and small mouth. It's just anime and manga and nerdy shit all the time.
So you lie about what I tell the truth about.
Absolutely, 100%. The thing for me is I love a game. I love games in general, for that matter, and baseball falls into that. And I played baseball back in the day. I was absolute dog shit at it, but that doesn't matter. I still had fun. And so I find
you should have learned like 8 languages.
Yeah, you'd be in the CIA right now.
Yeah, you may not even know if I know 8 languages. I don't know. I lived on military bases my whole
Call
life.
him the WW2 Spy.
But no, I know Moe Berg because of my fascination with baseball, because I had a unique fascination with early baseball, if it operated the same way with like modern baseball. So I did learn a little bit about that and his association with all the other players and stuff like that. And that this all tracks. Like, don't get me wrong, I still am missing some points in there, but I do recognize the name. So
If I was into a sport, it'd probably be baseball. Baseball or hockey, I think. You know,
Steven and I live in the South. We don't even know what hockey is.
it's true. It's basically kind of like a sideshow sort of thing. Like someone just calls you up and says, "Hey, you want to go watch some hockey?" And they're like, "There's hockey in the South?"
People in the South just go watch hockey for the free air conditioning.
seriously, Jesus Christ.
So on that second trip to Japan, when he was there with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and all of them, this is probably, I mean, he's been doing some weird, like you said, analyst-y type intelligence stuff, just kind of on his own for fun, on the side. But this was probably the one that really like put him over the edge. And no one knows why he did it, which is the weird part. But I'll get into that in a second. Anyway, while he was there, he went and bought some flowers. He wore like a traditional kimono and went to a hospital and said he was visiting the U.S. ambassador's daughter who had just had a baby, which she did. And so they let him in, no problem. He threw away the flowers immediately, went up to the roof of the hospital, opened his kimono and pulled out a camera and just started filming all around the hospital where you could see the harbor, factories.
No, like, so like they didn't know why he did it. He just did it for shits and giggles. Like maybe he was testing himself. Maybe he was like seeing if he could, you know, like.
So he gets asked later on. You saw in the movie, he gets asked later on whenever he does join the intelligence community, like, why did you record this? Did someone request you record this? Did the army contact you? Did some other branch contact you? Did the government ask? And he's like, no. He was like, no, I just thought it would be useful. You know, he was like, I read that we might be getting into a conflict later on with Japan, and I thought, you know, this footage would be useful. But there's still speculation out there that maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe he actually was approached and he just kept it secret because he's a really secretive guy. But anyway, he takes all this footage, and I think I spoke about this before with you guys, but like, it was very hard to get any kind of footage or pictures of anything of Japan at the time because they were on like total lockdown. Like if you got caught, if you were an American that was over there and you got caught with a camera, like you were probably not going back to America.
No,
it was highly illegal. And
for foreigners, so at the time, it was, just to be clear, it was highly illegal for foreigners, more or less, Americans, especially since we were about to get into an impending conflict, to carry any kind of like recording device.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
I mean, the Japanese have always been a little reticent when it comes to recording devices in general. They're very much kind of like a. It's better now, but they were very xenophobic, insular nation. Like, I mean, if you look back, even with the other Asian countries, they did not get along with them. So,
yeah. So after recording that, he went back home, sat on it, and went back to playing some baseball. He had a pretty cush lifestyle. Like I said, he mostly just. I mean, he was still catching every now and then. He's sitting on the bench, joking it up with the players and the coaches. He was asked to. I mean, he wasn't like being forced to, but he was being asked multiple times over to like retire and move into coaching. And he was like, "Why would I do that?" He was like, "I like playing baseball." And he also started going on, because he's a genius. Started going on this radio quiz show called Information Please. That they also show in the movie, and he kicked ass on it. I think he made 3 appearances on it, and just did amazing. Like every question was getting
He
right.
just nailed it. Yeah.
He stumped the judge or whatever a few times and like corrected him on information. And
he was the first actually guy.
Yeah.
Actually, goo.
After one of his appearances, the baseball commissioner told him, "Berg, in just 30 minutes, you did more for baseball than I've done the entire time I've been commissioner."
Get the hell out.
But the last time he was on there, the judge or the host started asking like a bunch of personal questions of Berg, and as we know, he's a very secretive guy. It made him super uncomfortable, and he just left, and he never came back on the show.
So when do we get to the part where he starts to get involved with
about the time when them planes flew over Hawaii?
Are we missing anything in between where we are now and that point?
No. Like I said, he was just kind of living the dream, still playing baseball, and doing some other shenanigans. Being a bachelor, he was, like I said, he was a super charismatic person. So he was always meeting different people of interest and charming them. But after Pearl Harbor happened, the U.S. went full-fledged into World War II. Now, he knew that the U.S. was about to go very strong against Japan, but was obviously low on intelligence. Well, one of those people that he charmed who became a friend was Nelson Rockefeller, who was running the Office of the Coordinator of Inter-American Affairs, so associated with OSS. But he met with him and told him about the footage he had from years earlier, and ended up getting a sit down with none other than Wild Bill Donovan.
I feel like that must have been an experience.
Is a callback. I'd like to introduce you to the OSS initiative.
And so like I mentioned earlier, the first questions that came was like, why do you have this footage? Why did you take this footage? Who asked you to take this footage? And he was just like, I don't know. I thought it'd be fun. And anyway, Donovan kind of just ran him through a series of very intense interviews on, his life, his lifestyle, his intelligence, his interests, and
the only thing he really wanted an answer to was, do you want to fight for your country? Like, I feel like I've been in the military before. That this is ultimately, they want to ask you a lot of questions around that. They're just like, do you want to do this? Because that's all that really fucking matters. Ultimately.
Yep.
You can use someone with lesser intelligence or lesser strength, whatever the case is. As long as they are motivated, they are going to be an asset. And I feel like in this situation, that was kind of the primary thing. And it just happened to be his intelligence and his capabilities that really came to make him shine in this in history.
Now, we have to also remember, this is also the same organization that he applied for that asked him these questions that painted foxes with irradium and tried to make Hitler a woman. So let's not forget about like the OSS and their shenanigans. Like, Moe Berg is cool and everything, but like I feel like, especially after doing the research, like he might have been the actual like first like real thing that I could take seriously that the OSS has actually done.
You know what it feels like? It feels like the OSS just recruited the weirdest people possible. And while the language abilities and the education of Moe Berg was an asset, ultimately he was just another weird dude that they hired. Like, Wild Bill Donovan himself is a weird dude.
Yeah.
What's his criteria for hiring? Like, it has to be weird shit because he's a weird dude. That's why I think that the whole he's like, I'm a warrior, I want to fight people all the time. Yeah. I think that's why he mainly cares. Like, do you want to fight for the country too? Because I do.
Yeah, we all had that table of like weirdos who sat in the cafeteria. Like it's like Bill Donovan went to that table, was like, y'all have a job, and that's the start of the OSS. There's the smelly kid, the one who wears fedoras all the time. It's just like the people that they hire. It's
the guy that speaks French for no reason whatsoever.
Eight languages for no reason. Like he just does it. Like I don't know.
So since he spoke all these languages, he was first assigned. Like they were like, we can send this guy anywhere, and they sent him down to like the Caribbean and South America first. I think he was like monitoring soldiers, like their health and their physical fitness while they were stationed there. But it wasn't long before they were like, okay, these countries aren't really a threat for us in World War II. Like a lot of different European countries are, like Japan is. So they ended up pulling him out. He ends up working for the OSS proper. And he gets assigned to like what is now the modern day CIA Special Activities Division. And he is assigned a desk job, basically looking at the Balkans.
Yeah. Question. So him being a baseball player, a rather famous baseball player, kind of unorthodox as a famous person to go into spy work and subterfuge and espionage. Did he ever get recognized at all, or were people like in the middle of a mission, like they're like, "Oh my God, Moe Berg"?
Yeah, there was a few times I read in once again plug Sam Keen's Bastard Brigade, where they would come up and be like, "Are you Moe Berg, like the American baseball player?" And he'd be like, "I must look like him. I get told that all the time."
Yeah,
like,
the ultimate subterfuge.
That was like a legit part of that movie that I thought was funny. It wasn't that exact situation, but yes,
it's like I must look like him.
Can I ask, is Moe Berg the inspiration for the Bear Jew and Inglourious Bastards?
I had that exact thought, but
I mean, we're talking baseball bat, Jewish guy, really smart. Just
yeah. But that guy couldn't speak Italian though. Like, isn't that there's that whole scene where he's like, they're like Margaretti, and
obviously that's the difference. The Bear Jew and Inglourious Bastards didn't really come off as a super intellectual person, and he was all about murdering Nazis. And Moe Berg was actually like really
a sweetheart.
Conflicted. Yeah, he had big heart. He was very conflicted about actually hurting people and war itself. Obviously, he loved his country. He wanted us to win, and he wanted to do what it took to make that happen. But as we'll get to with Werner Heisenberg, he's very conflicted about actually taking someone's life or causing any harm to a person.
Okay, so he's working in the OSS proper now at this point.
Yep, he has a desk job in Washington where he's just monitoring the situation in Yugoslavia, and he's kind of coordinating some different missions. But man, this guy's lived his life on a baseball field, and he's used to traveling around the world during his off seasons, right? Like he's not used to being confined to a desk, so he quickly wants out of this.
Yeah, like as anybody would. I work a desk job. In fact, most 2 out of 3 of us work like a desk job, and you get stir crazy. It's just, and especially if you're a wanderlusty type of guy like Moe Berg, and you're used to working on your feet. Because I personally went from restaurants to desk job, and it is miserable. It's agonizing. So I can only imagine what Moe Berg mentally, because there's that whole scene in the movie too where he was legit just running down the hall.
Yeah, Yeah, so he wasn't in that desk job for more than like a couple of months. And then he finally convinced his superiors to give him like a real mission. And so he's assigned to what is called Project Larson. And the purpose of the project was to go into Italy and kidnap Italian rocket and missile specialists and bring them to the U.S. And that's like where he really got his calling, was like the subterfuge and espionage. And
we did some wild shit in World War II. Holy hell. Well, we're just going to take people off the street, like, oh, look, he knows rockets, get him.
That was basically the OSS. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's wild.
And then because of like his intelligence level, like he had done his research and taken classes into like quantum physics and mechanics, and so he wasn't an Oppenheimer or a Heisenberg by any means. Like he wasn't at that level, but he had a high enough understanding that he could be explained something and have a grasp on what they were talking about. So that, along with his million languages he could speak fluently, made him a good pick for Project Azusa, AZUSA, which had the goal of interviewing Italian physicists to learn what they knew about our good friend, not good friend, Werner Heisenberg, along with Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker. And it was the whole goal was for them to kidnap scientists or people akin to scientists and interview them. Basically, how far along is Germany with an atomic bomb? There was also a huge project called the Alsos Project, which is the main point, or the kind of the main setting of the Bastard Brigade. It's a combination of like Army intelligence, Navy intelligence, the Manhattan Project, the OSS. This is probably our biggest culmination of all these intelligence group, along with some international partners at stopping the Nazi atomic bomb. And Moe Berg is also a part of that. And during that project also is where he really gets his big mission, which was to, they learned that Heisenberg is going to be giving a lecture in Zurich, and they tasked Berg with attending his lecture and determining, quote, if anything Heisenberg said convinced him that the Germans were close to a bomb, then he was to kill him.
Yeah.
And from what I've read and what was also depicted in the movie, he was conflicted from the start. I don't know if this is legitimately how it went down, but in the movie, at least, he looks at Jeff Daniels, Wild Bill Donovan.
Jeff Daniels. It was Jeff Daniels. It was just a conversation between Paul Rudd, Paul Giamatti, and Jeff Daniels.
In terms of casting, that makes sense.
And he's like, what if he's on our side? And all of them kind of look at him and they're like, there's no information, no intelligence that would even point to the direction that he's on our side. We know he's out there experimenting with heavy water. As far as we know, the Germans are close to a bomb if they haven't already reached the cusp of making it happen. So he ends up attending this lecture with Heisenberg and can't really get a good bead on whether or not it seems like the Nazis are close to a bomb or not. So he ends up arranging through another scientist, Paul Scherer, to meet with him. As he meets with him, he kind of overhears different conversations. Things are getting political. From what I've read, everything, that part about the movie was mostly true. And you get this sense that Werner Heisenberg, he's not a Nazi, whatsoever. He is a scientist who loves his country to a fault, a very big fault, which is, I want my country to be on top of the science community. I want to be the foremost scientist for my homeland of Germany, even if that means working for the Nazis.
Yeah, very, and he wasn't popular because of that, I'm sure.
Right. Especially in the scientific community, so many scientists fled Nazi Germany and Nazi-occupied countries rather than work for the Nazis. They fled their occupations, they fled with their families, they basically put themselves in squalor and on the run versus continuing any kind of research for the Nazis.
There's that speculation too that he might have been actually trying to sabotage the Nazis' progress on the atomic bomb. Nothing has officially been proven on that from what I've read, but I know that there was that speculation, and then hence why I don't know how Moe Berg got there to that conclusion, but like to circle back to Moe Berg saying, "What if he's on our side?" You know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so Moe Berg, I mean, has more than one opportunity during the lecture and during meeting Werner Heisenberg that he could have killed him, and he doesn't. And later on, after the war is ended, or actually before the war is ended, we end up kidnapping Werner Heisenberg and basically finally convince him to talk to us. And he says I think he did say that he was kind of like holding up the project the whole time, that like he wasn't trying to create a bomb. Like
He wasn't in a rush, essentially.
like he was trying to research the nuclear physics part of it without creating the bomb. Which is what he says. He's being held hostage by Americans at this point, right? But he did go on after the war to release the information of like where all the heavy water resources were that Germany had. He went on to join Germany's like anti-nuclear community. He really tried to make up for what he was during the years of the war. And
feels like every scientist in World War II had nuclear remorse,
for sure. And so there might be truth to Werner Heisenberg actually not trying to create an atomic bomb for Germany, and that's why they didn't beat us to it. And Moe Berg was able to feel that out from his talking to him and just being around him. As we know, one of the reasons he was such a great ball player wasn't because he could hit or because he could run or anything like that. It was because he could read the players so well and know what was about to happen. Using that same sense on this, he's a highly intelligent person. One wonders.
So ultimately, he was sent to assassinate this gentleman, but ended up flipping him for us.
Maybe the speculation is that Werner had already flipped himself, or was never flipped over to begin with. If that makes sense. Like he was never really, really working with the Nazis in full, and Moe Berg was able to conclude that from meeting him. Not that Moe Berg actually had anything to do with making him flip, but
Gotcha.
Who knows what really happened?
Moe Berg does.
I know that after the war, Moe Berg is a bit of a character still. He continues on with the OSS and doesn't really do anything of particular matter afterwards except run up the OSS's budget and not keep any receipts. Man spent like hundreds of thousands of today's dollars on just traipsing around the world and staying in fancy hotels, eating good meals, and never actually he in fact after he leaves the OSS, he never does anything again. He doesn't go back to baseball. He doesn't go be a lawyer. He doesn't go be a professor. He doesn't go work for any other intelligence agency. He actually just kind of bounces around couches. It's his family and friends, just using his natural charisma.
Are you fucking kidding me? This man has all of this ability, and he does all this shit, and he goes, "I'm good. I already spent the government's money." I think it's wild.
I think something really rocked him about the whole Werner Heisenberg mission. After the OSS was disbanded, Harry Truman actually awarded Berg a Medal of Freedom, and Berg just declined and never gave a reason why.
He's like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah, it wasn't until after he died that his sister accepted it for him and gave it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. But one funny note is I say he never did anything again. There was one point when there was the whole Soviet nuclear scare, The CIA asked him to come work in their intelligence, and he did briefly, but they gave him once again today's worth of hundreds of thousands of dollars to do intelligence.
And he just burned
and
through it all.
He just burned through it all.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
So they were like, "All right, get out of here, Mo."
That's the biggest fucking fuck you to the
look.
I feel like.
That's not. To be fair, that's on the fucking intelligence agencies. He's been doing that shit since baseball. If no one noticed, if no one did research, that's on them.
Yeah. So the author who wrote The Catcher Was a Spy, of which the movie that Zach and I watched was based upon.
I had to watch this.
He apparently, the biography, the book itself, is very, very much more in depth than the movie could ever hope to be. Who would have guessed that, right?
Imagine.
Anyway, you can tell that the writer, I believe his name is Nicholas Dawidoff, is super knowledgeable. Probably one of the most knowledgeable people on Moe Berg himself. Interviewed tons of family, friends, fellow spies, things like that. And he wrote, Berg, ever on the move, always avoiding sustained relationships where people might get a clear look at him, and he was equally determined to skirt situations where he might be forced to look at himself. Berg suffered from an insecurity so severe that at times it debilitated him completely.
Trauma response.
More often, his lack of self-esteem banished all tranquility from his life. So yeah, there's something about it that he just was a terribly insecure person, and that in itself made him a super secretive person.
This man just constantly moved forward, without looking back.
And
that insecurity too, that actually explains a lot to me about him a little bit, because if you're constantly insecure and you're constantly you have a turbulent lifestyle, you're always seeking to improve, be better, to be good enough for the people around you. So maybe that's why in my headcanon, that's kind of what I feel like is happening. He did nothing after the CIA. Basically, other than that little small stint stint with the CIA, and then he did nothing. He just kind of lived his life out.
Yeah. He spent a lot of time at baseball games. After that, he never missed a Mets game. And he would sit up in the press boxes because it was free food at the time, and he would just take his free meals.
I think it's amazing. I think this man had it figured out. He had everybody figured out. I think he was a genius, but not if I had to argue, he is both a patriot and a con man at the same time. And that's I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying he genuinely is. He knew where the resources were.
Yeah, he found a way to traverse life rather easily, I feel like.
Wouldn't we all do the same? Wouldn't we all do it if we had the chance?
Yeah, it's that path of least resistance thing,
But I also think it goes back to a lot of that insecurity, right? I mean, I think that was a strong motivation for a lot of his actions. His later on in his life, he started getting a lot of requests to write his memoir, and he kept turning them down. But he finally began work on one in 1960. But then they said he quit after the co-writer confused him with Moe Howard of the Three Stooges. And he was like, "Oh, we're done here. We're done here.
You don't even know who the fuck I am."
My favorite note about him, my final note about him, was that he died, unfortunately. That's not my favorite note, sorry.
Fuck that guy, he's dead.
What is happening right now? You're like, my favorite part is when he died.
No,
good riddance.
Let me rephrase. So Moe Berg died, unfortunately, in May 29th, 1972, at a ripe age of 70. He suffered a fall in his home, but the nurse said his final words were, "How did the Mets do today?"
Oh my god!
What a fucking champ!
That is a chat if I've ever heard it.
Oh man, Moe Berg, fucking American hero. Seriously, the researching into this a bit, he's really just kind of somebody who I feel like I kind of strive to be like with a lot less of the insecurities, of course, but you know, learning fucking 8 languages, just being a super smart guy.
No,
you know,
I think the opposite. I think Moe Berg, American slacker, 100% learned the things he did so that he could take advantage of a system he knew how to work.
He worked his ass to learn the system, though.
Look, I've seen plenty of people work hard to be lazy, to know that that is a possibility, whether it be the 1920s and 30s or modern times. And I feel a little bit like Moe Berg's that guy. Like, he was like, I'm good enough at baseball.
I think he spent the better. I think he spent the better half of his life, going full steam, right? In academics, in sports, and then into war and fighting for his country. And then after that, he became a little bit jaded to the whole thing. And he was just like, I really done all I can. I think it's time to just sit back and enjoy some baseball.
Oh, they were making me bring receipts for all of my fine dining. I quit.
He spent his younger life and the beginning of his adult life, you know, doing one of the happiest things you can possibly imagine, was just playing some baseball. And then he goes into Europe in World War II and sees all the death and destruction and pretty much every terrible thing you can think of, and then comes back. He can't just go back and play baseball. First of all, he's too old at that point.
Tough.
But I mean, you got to imagine like his whole worldview. I mean, he was a smart guy, so it's not like he didn't know that stuff existed. But I got to imagine seeing it firsthand, kind of like,
oh yeah, firsthand experience is a whole other animal. Yeah, absolutely.
But anyways, with that, we finished our second part of our World War II story trilogy. We'll have a surprise for you on the next one. I think we're going to talk about Mr. Boris Pash, another member of the OSS. And this guy, if Moe Berg has like the biggest heart in the world, Boris Pash is like his foil. And who knows? Maybe they meet up in the story. We'll see.
Ooh, a crossover.
Appreciate you guys delving into the story with me. It was a really good time. I'm just fascinated by all these crazy stories that we just don't hear about, like learning history growing up. And I just enjoy every one of them I read. But make sure if you like the content that you subscribe, because we have a whole lot more coming. We're on a weekly release schedule right now. So new stuff in your inbox all the time.
Wednesdays.
And if you want to see more of us, our friend over here, Z Diggity, is back on the streaming game on Twitch. That's Z Diggity. And me and him have been playing some Baldur's Gate every week, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, come check us out. Say hi.
And I sit over there jealous I can't join.
I know, you should. We'll put the link of the Twitch channel in the description. So,
all right. With that, you guys have a great night, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.